I ask what's going on? I see everyone is quiet.
Paul, you can start now. Thank you.
Thank you. A warm welcome to you all. My name is Paul Harrison. I'm the chairman of the Britain-Tanzania Society, or BTS. BTS is a membership organization that's been running since the 1970s. The Britain-Tanzania Society aims to increase mutual knowledge, understanding and respect between the peoples of Britain and Tanzania through webinars, seminars, events and publications, and through the development of education, health, water and sanitation, and self-help community development activities, and the promotion of gender equality. We have a magazine, Tanzanian Affairs, that's circulated 3 times a year. And we also run a small but dynamic and focused charity, the Tanzania Development Trust. Please do join the society if you're not already a member, and do support Tanzania Development Trust. So onto the subject of today, please, a warm welcome to you all. On the 19th of March, 2022, Tanzania's President, Samia Suluhu Hassan, was sworn in, succeeding John Pombe Magufuli, following his tragic death from illness whilst he was still in office. And whilst we can reflect on the shock and sadness of the nation of losing a president in his prime, we can also reflect on an unforeseen opportunity, that of the first female president of Tanzania, and one of only a handful of female heads of states in Africa, or indeed worldwide, to forge ahead with the growth and development agenda for Tanzania. President Hassan has taken to a new role in the midst of a pandemic and a vibrant time, to say the least, for geopolitics generally. In this webinar today, Britain-Tanzania Society, in collaboration with the Royal African Society here in the UK and Friends of Tanzania based in the United States, look forward to exploring and to better understanding the impact of the first year of office, President Samia Suluhu Hassan. So shortly, we'll hear a keynote address from Her Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Honourable Liberata Mulamula. And thereafter, following introductions from our partners, I will then ask Ben Taylor, the editor of our magazine, Tanzanian Affairs, to chair the panel discussion where we will hear from senior female leaders on their perspectives, before getting into discussions and a Q&A session where we hope we can hear from you, the audience, in what we hope will be a very lively and informed conversation today. So to get on with the show and the first part of our proceedings, I've got the great privilege in welcoming our keynote speaker today. That is Her Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the United Republic of Tanzania, Honourable Liberata Mulamula, a former top-level career diplomat, including to the United Nations and to the United States, and now Minister of Foreign Affairs. Karibu sana, Minister. Please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Asante sana, Paul. Let me also greet everyone. Nowadays, our greeting is tunawasalimu kwa jina la Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania, meaning I greet you in the name of the United Republic of Tanzania, and we all respond, kazi iendelee. Let me thank you, Paul, for inviting me to participate in this session tonight, in this webinar. I'm happy that I've been able to participate, because there was a time that I might not be able to. First of all, I'm happy that you chose to reflect on President Samia's first year in office, a new direction for Tanzania. I take note of the question mark. I'll come back to that. But also, let me also recognize the presence of our High Commissioner, Her Excellency Dr. Asharoz Migiro, who is, I'm sure you've been working closely. I also want to add that Britain-Tanzania Society is well known. You have been like a link between Britain and Tanzania, but giving it a new energy to reflect on our relations, but also getting a mutual understanding of what our relations are, but how you see Tanzania in the eyes of British people. But also, as you rightly said, we are meeting here today at the time that we celebrate 1 year, but we are also celebrating, we are still in March, we are celebrating the International Women's Month, but also for the Tanzanians, we are marking 1 year since the sad demise of our late President Dr. John Pombe Magufuli. So while we are celebrating President Samia's slew of 1 year in office, but we are also mourning our departed leader. So let me request you, in the silence of your heart, let us pray and remember our late president and pray for his kind soul to rest in eternal peace. I was struck by the theme of your meeting today. Let me say at the outset that while many see it as a new direction under the new six-phase government, in essence, I would like to underline that it is actually a continuity and a seamless continuity of Tanzania leadership through its successive administrations or regimes. I'm fortunate to have served in the six-phase government since Mwalimu up to the present. So I've seen in the 60 years of Tanzania's independence, while leaders might set new direction, but Tanzania has remained and is known for continuity in terms of upholding the major principles, the values, the culture, but more important, it has continued through its successive regimes, has continued to promote and protect the fundamental human rights, democracy, and good governance. And its policies have been focused on the respect of the rule of law and our constitution. It's been about promotion of our national unity, social cohesion, maintenance of peace and stability, promoting multilateral cooperation, African unity, non-aligned, but also promoting the policy of good neighborliness and support of the oppressed people and their right to self-determination. So I'm outlining these principles just to get everyone to appreciate that while we are celebrating the advent of President Samia, that the principles have remained the same, that have determined both our domestic and foreign policy. But then, as you rightly said, Paul, President Samia assumed the presidency under very difficult and challenging circumstances. It was the first time in the history of Tanzania that we lost the president in office, but she also assumed the presidency in the midst of the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic. So as soon as she took office, she had to restore the trust and confidence among the Tanzanian people, but also the international community, that she will pursue what her predecessor was able to achieve in the 5 years of presidency. And this is why she came out with this greeting of reminding everyone that the work continues. I know I don't know how much time I have, but my High Commissioner, Dr. Elsie Eyakuze, reminded me that I have only 10 minutes. And you know, with diplomats, just like politicians, if you make a mistake of giving them a microphone, they know where to start, but they don't know where to end. Especially when we look at 1 year of President Samia's being in office, there is so much that has been happening. There have been so much in terms of how she has been able to revitalize Tanzania's political, social, and economic sectors. She has outlined key areas of our government priorities, which of course, not new, but giving it a new vigor. First and foremost is to undertake implementation of the flagship projects, but the blueprint of our 5-year development plan. She has undertaken a number of reforms in creating and improving the business environment in the country, but also continuing where President Magufuli left in terms of developing these flagship projects, in terms of the physical infrastructure, particularly the roads and railways, improving access to power and promoting energy generation from renewable sources. You have heard of the big hydropower project named after Mwalimu, which is ongoing, and this would be a game changer for Tanzania in terms of access to energy. She has focused on improving, of course, access to quality health services, but also tackling the COVID-19 pandemic, getting Tanzania from the denial of the existence of this pandemic, but also, tackling it heads on, but through the scientific and medical advice. As you all know, Tanzania had resisted to join the COVAX, but as soon as she assumed the office, she recognized that we need to get on this international platform to be able to tackle this pandemic. And you have heard saying many times that Tanzania cannot continue to live as an island. So she opened up Tanzania to the world in revitalizing our relations with our countries, with the international community, with our friendly countries, with our neighbors. You have been following the visits she has undertaken in our 1-year tenure. She's opened up the country. She has made a number of economic trips abroad, and people have been counting. For me, as a foreign minister who has accompanied her on many of these visits, they are very transformative. She has been able to restore, I must say, restoring the confidence and trust among the international community at the bilateral level, at multilateral level, but more important, she has opened up opportunities for Tanzania in terms of investment, trade, and tourism opportunities. You must have heard also, because for her, she believes in respect of the rule of law. So we have been signing a number of agreements of cooperation in the economic, social, and the political spheres. She has put emphasis in demonstrating that the current government is upholding the performance of its predecessors in project implementation, but also respecting the agreements that we sign. And of course, the message is that Tanzania remains very much focused on its development goals, in sync with its vision for the future. And you all know that Tanzania attained its middle income status before even we reached our Vision 2025. But of course, talking about what has energized the presidency in the 6th phase government is having a female president. I know you'll be focusing on breaking the glass ceiling. I've been teaching about women and leadership in Africa. I always remind everyone, I said for Africa, it's not breaking the glass ceiling, but breaking the wooden ceiling, and you know how hard it is. But we have seen it. President Samia has made history in our region, in the East African region. And in one of our maiden speeches, she reminded everyone that, that they should see her, of course, this is in tackling the bias that we all face as women, that in seeing her, that she should be seen as a leader, as a commander-in-chief who happens to be a woman. And again, coming back to my teaching, I always say leadership has no gender. A leader is a leader. But she also said during her maiden speech at the 76th UN General Assembly session in September last year, if you allow me to quote her, she said, as the first female president in the history of my country, the burden of expectation to deliver, especially on gender equality, is heavy on my shoulder. So this is the burden which she admitted has, but she has taken it up heads on. She believes that the country cannot achieve development goals without achieving gender equality and women empowerment first and foremost. And in making this a reality, under 1 year leadership, she has undertaken various measures in order to achieve gender equality, some of them being, first of all, the decision of reviewing the 2000 National Gender Policy to ensure that contemporary gender issues are addressed properly. Actually, she has also brought in the nexus between women empowerment, gender, and climate change challenges. But she has also undertaken to ensure promotion and appointment of high number of women in our government, with more female cabinet ministers, but also in other levels. Mama Meghji, she will be talking about her experience being the pioneer. We are so many of the first and first and first. I see also Dr. Sharos Bingiro sharing of being the first, but she's determined to make sure that we are not the first, we are not the last. We are first, not the last. And finally, something that she took the courage, and this is being also celebrated by the international community. She took the decision to allow teenage mothers to continue with school after giving birth. So as I said, I can go on and on. There's so many things that we can talk about our accomplishment within 1 year. It's been remarkable. But then, given that the panel will be also reflecting on the challenges, because I'm sure it has not been all rosy. But for me, having served in this government, I must say everything looks rosy. And the strides we have seen in 1 year, it is unprecedented.
Thank you.
So finally, let me say that under leadership, especially for women, it has inspired young girls who dream of being leaders and entering in this space, political space. So thank you very much. And I'll be around in case there will be questions, but I'm more happy to listen to the panelists. Thank you very much, Asante Sana.
Asante Sana, thank you so much, Honourable Minister, Ambassador. Thank you for giving us some context there, a lot of context, a lot of detail of what's happened in this year. I'd now like to introduce our two partners, starting with Dr. Nicholas Westcott, who's the Director of the Royal African Society. Nicholas, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Paul, and many thanks to the Honourable Minister for that comprehensive overview of what's been going on, or at least part of it. I'm the Director of the Royal African Society, and the Royal African Society exists to both promote and provide the platforms for African voices in the UK and across the world. So we're extremely pleased to partner with the Britain-Tanzania Society, which does a remarkable job at informing people in this country and more widely of what is going on in Tanzania, which is sometimes hard to find out. It's especially good for me, this partnership, because it was 45 years ago, I embarked on a PhD on Tanzanian history. And since then, I've lived there for 4 years, I've visited regularly, and Tanzania has always been a fascinating country, unique in its own way. And I think despite the sad circumstances of the president's succession, we should celebrate the fact that Tanzania has one of the very few female heads of state and government in Africa at the moment. As the minister has said, these are very challenging times, very good to discuss how Tanzania and President Samia herself are facing up to them. Not just the COVID pandemic that was mentioned, but the growing economic stresses, not least because of the spreading conflict in Europe, which is causing significant knock-on impact in the world economy. The Royal African Society covers the whole continent, and we hold a lot of events. One of these, next Wednesday, the 23rd of March, will be on Africa's response to the Ukraine crisis. And we do hope people will join that. I should be very interested to hear how Tanzania is responding to it, in particular, given the challenge, as the Minister says, as to whether the international system will proceed under the basis of a rule of law or the rule of force. And that, I think, is a critical matter for the whole of Africa. But thank you very much, Paul, and I'm looking forward to the debate.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nicholas Westcott, there, Director of the Royal African Society. I'd now also like to introduce Alison Erickson from Friends of Tanzania, our colleagues in the United States.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you to Paul and the Britain Tanzania Society for putting on this event. And I wanted to thank Ambassador Mulamula for her remarks. So I'm here to represent Friends of Tanzania. We were founded in 1991 to support worthy community development projects in Tanzania and to share information on life, culture, and development of Tanzania here with our members, mostly in the United States, and to bring together people interested in supporting Tanzania through programs such as this. And we're very excited to be here and look forward to the panel. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Alison. Alison Erickson there from Friends of Tanzania. So now we're getting to, having heard from the Honourable Minister and from our partners, we now get to the second and the core segment of our event today, the panel discussion. This will be chaired by Ben Taylor. Ben is the editor of Tanzanian Affairs, which is our magazine, which we produce 3 times a year, and which I personally think punches well above its weight in terms of insights into Tanzania. So Ben will now bring together the panel, and we'll take over from here before we close at the end. So over to you, Ben. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everybody, depending on where you are in the world. As Paul said, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm the editor of Tanzanian Affairs, and I'll be chairing the rest of the discussion here today. We have a highly distinguished panel, and I'm looking forward very much to what should be a fascinating conversation. We have about an hour ahead of us, in which I will invite each of our panelists to share their thoughts and invite some questions from other participants as well. Nobody is here to hear me, however, so my intention in chairing the discussion is to try and get out of the way as much as possible. I will only say before introducing the panel, though, that as others have mentioned, this occasion marks exactly 1 year since President Samia came to office. She did so unexpectedly, following the sad and untimely passing of President John Pombe Magufuli. President Magufuli was hugely popular with many Tanzanians who saw him as standing up for the interests of ordinary citizens, especially in areas like corruption, waste, tax avoidance, and more. He was also, we have to recognize, he was also in some ways a controversial figure, both for his attitude to business and politics and democracy, among other things as well. We're not here, though, to discuss President Magufuli, but his successor, President Samia Suluhu Hassan. She has been in office now for 12 months, so let's go straight in to get our thoughts from our panelists on how this year has gone. I will start with Honourable Zakia Meghji. Honourable Meghji is a Tanzanian MP representing CCM, who served as the first female Minister of Finance from 2006 to 2008. She has also served as the longest serving tourism minister for Tanzania, bringing many positive changes in the ministry during her time in office. Mheshimiwa, karibu sana.
Asante sana, asante sana.
Mheshimiwa, what does it mean for Tanzania to have a female president? What opportunities and challenges will this bring? And in particular, given your experience as Tanzania's first female finance minister, you must have some insights on what she's facing, the situation she's in.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I would like to say, first of all, that for the very first time in the history of Tanzania, a woman became president. And Samia Suluhu Hassan, first of all, made history and entered into a list of very few women presidents worldwide. And I would say that as a woman, I'm very proud. I was very happy. I'm very happy and excited also. And she set a trend in Tanzania and even in East Africa by being the first female president. The other one is the first female commander-in-chief, but also the first female chair of the Chama cha Mapinduzi, CCM, which is the ruling party in Tanzania. Now, Samia Suluhu Hassan, as she was the vice president before, she came into power with a lot of experience, both at the government and also at the party level, and continued where President Magufuli left. And that is why her greetings, as Honorable Mulamula has pointed out. But also she made some changes to cement more on her leadership style. First of all, I would like to say, as a female president, she proved to be a good role model to the young ones, a good role model as a president, as a woman, and also brought positivity and gender equality in Tanzania. She also installed confidence, and women looking up at her saw a potential in also being leaders. For those who felt that, perhaps I cannot be a leader, they looked up and saw President Samia Suluhu, that as a leader, she could be able to be a president, and she was delivering, and she was doing a very good job. And therefore they felt that even for themselves, they can perform much more even than men, and perhaps much more than other men can perform. So it gave them confidence also at the same time. And I would say that the results were seen very fast. First of all, the deputy speaker, who is a woman, Tulia Ackson, vied for a position of speaker, and she won by 100% votes in parliament. So within a very short time of 1 year period, 2 out of 3 pillars were headed by women. Whereas 1 year ago, I would say that none was headed by a woman. The executive and the legislative have been headed by women. So this is a big change also from presidential president to be a female. Another thing she emphasized on is more on gender sensitivity to Tanzania, an issue which has been implemented since Beijing conference. She pushed it further, and I said she put it further, because there have been changes all along, but she pushed it further. And in doing so, in her second reshuffle, she appointed more capable women to ministerial positions and regional commissioners and also district commissioners. For the very first time since independence, she picked a very capable woman to head the Ministry of Defense. And she also made some changes and appointed some women who are in deputy minister position, who have stayed for a long time, but who are very capable. And she put them into the ministerial position. One example is the Minister for Lands. She's now the Minister of full Minister of Land. Apart from that, what she has done now is she created a separate ministry for gender, women, children, and special groups. Prior to that, this ministry was part of the Ministry of Health. And therefore she set a special ministry headed by a woman to take care of these issues. At the same time, in the party, being the party chairman, for the very first time also, she appointed the Deputy Secretary General of the party. This lady also very capable. She was once a regional commissioner for Songea region, and she's doing quite a lot of good work. Perhaps I should mention also another area of contention. This area of contention was for girls who are getting pregnant and who have been discontinued going to school. While those who made them pregnant, the boys, went scot-free. And so she decided that they should go back to school. And this is in line with 50-50 parity that we are talking about in the Beijing conference also. Other areas, many areas, were empowerment of women economically. For example, she encouraged the bank to give loans with low interest rate of 1 digit or you know, at the same time, she emphasized the question of getting loans using the 4% from the local government. You know. So within 1 year, one can say that she has done a lot. When she started, some people hesitated whether Tanzania is ready for a female president. You know. Some people said that no, she cannot make it, she won't do it, you know. And I remember that once she had to stand up in a meeting and declare, say that here is a woman, but a president. You know, this was the time when people were not very sure, were saying that they were hesitating and on. And this reminds me actually of a case in point in myself. When I was appointed the first female minister for finance in 2006, this is 16 years ago. Some doubted whether the president then, President Kikwete, made the right choice, that I can deliver. But not because I was, not because I was not capable, but because for the very first time in the corridors of the Ministry of Finance, a woman minister is there. And I remember that even when I went there, some officers said that, you know, this ministry is very tough. You see, it's very tough, and you have to read, you know, many documents. You know, you have to attend these meetings, IMF and World Bank meetings. You have to meet donors and whatnot. It's tough. But then, of course, for some people saw that I could do it because my experience as having worked for the international organization, for example, the International Cooperative Alliance, having been a minister for a long time, for many years, you know, minister, for example, for tourism for about 10 years, minister for health, and even in the party, so that I could make it. But the hesitancy, of course, I don't blame them. You know, the hesitancy was because that this is the time they felt that this is the time not for a woman. The woman cannot perform. But I did it. And, you know, and I said that after all, I work with international organization. I have met donors. I have read documents. I went to New York for meetings, you know, World Bank, and I did quite well. You know. So I think that the most important thing is that the confidence that one has, the hard work, but also the opening up. You know, opening up, for example, to the media. You know, because initially, of course, even for myself, the media was very unfriendly, and even for the president, the media coming out and really, you know, not seeing that she would perform. Opening up and making sure that you speak what you have done. And this is what President Samia is doing actually, for example, for the first time. Whenever she travels outside, when she comes back, she informs the public and tells the people how much has been obtained and how this money is going to be utilized. The COVID case at the same time. So, you know, I can go on and on, but I know that the time is of the factor. So thank you very much. Asante sana.
Thank you, Sana Mheshimiwa. I didn't want to interrupt you because what you were saying was so interesting there about both your own experience and the current president's actions. But we do need to move on because of time. So let me introduce our second panelist. Dr. Frannie Léautier is a Tanzanian civil engineer, academic, and finance and development expert. She served as Senior Vice President of the African Development Bank and Vice President at the World Bank Group. She's the founder and CEO of SouthBridge Investments and a member of several international organizations such as the World Economic Forum. Her publications include Leadership in a Globalized World, Complexity, Dynamics, and Risks. Dr. Léautier, karibu, welcome. My question for you is, how has President Hassan handled the economy since coming to office? And where do you think this is likely to take the country over the next few years? Thank you.
Asante sana, Ben. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me to share perspectives. I'm going to look at President Samia Hassan's contribution to leading the economy in the context of three important elements that are critical for economic management. First is peace and stability, and because she came into the position after the death of the incumbent president, she was really with a role to stabilize the nation and to get a peaceful transition, and that is very critical for economic stability. Secondly, crisis. Usually economies go into tailspins when crises are not well managed. And so she came into that role having to not only handle the transition following the passing of a former president, but also needing to manage a very critical global crisis, the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, and to stabilize the economy from that perspective as well. And then finally, she came at a time where critical decisions were being made regionally, sub-regionally, and internationally. The African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement had just been launched and come into fruition, and Tanzania had to set its pace and its role within that framework, and that was an opportunity for her leadership. Secondly, it was a very important COP meeting in Glasgow, where again, the country had to come with a position on how it sees the transition, energy transition in particular, but then the broader climate action. And then of course, the role of Tanzania within the East African community and all the choices that need to be made there. So in the achievements that I will cover, I will look at them in this broader context of stability and peace for economic management, choices during crisis and steering of an economy during crisis, and then taking opportunities sub-regionally, regionally, and globally. So the first major achievement, I would say, is in the category of saving lives. And that's the choice she made on how to handle the pandemic. Immediately putting in place the vaccination program. And even though Tanzania started late, now Tanzania has the percentage of vaccinated people that is quite respectable. Of course, more needs to be done, but it's very impressive what has been done in a short period of time. But more importantly, within the pandemic area is the focus that she brought to looking at building local capacity, because that local capacity will outlast the pandemic. It will be there for other health crises that may materialize. And I think that is very critical. The second key area, and this many nations are grappling with now, especially as a result of the pandemic, but even more so now because of the war in Ukraine, and that is food inflation. The prices of food have gone up tremendously across many countries. In Tanzania, the country has shown the least volatile food prices, and that is because of the focus that she put on domestic food production. And that allowed the country to not only feed itself, but also have some surpluses that could be exported to the neighbors. And this is around maize in particular, which is a crop that is of the main staple food in a number of regions in East Africa and the rest of Africa, and in other categories of food production. So she managed to keep food inflation low, or the least volatile in the region. The third area was poverty. Most economies saw an increase in poverty as a result of the pandemic. But in 2021, Tanzania was actually able to reduce poverty. Of course, it's not a very large reduction, but it's in the right direction because a lot more needs to be done. And that achievement, I think, is very noteworthy. The fourth one, which I find also quite important because it has an impact on exports, it has an impact on private sector investment, and it has an impact on business in general, is the currency. Today, Tanzania enjoys the most stable currency in the East African community. The shilling has been quite stable, which means the steering of the economy, and particularly the independence of the central bank to set the policies that would allow stable currencies, was maintained. And I think that's a very strong mark of leadership, because independence of the central bank is one of the key tenets for macroeconomic stability. The fifth area I'd mention is in banking. First of all, the banking sector has been stable. There have been no major crisis in the banking sector. All the banks are highly capitalized. They've all are within the Basel capital adequacy ratios, so doing well. And non-performing loans, which had really grown during the pandemic area, have started to come down. So the banking sector, which is very critical as well, has been stabilized. Then the sixth area I would mention is trade. Ambassador Mulamula mentioned it already. One of the things that struck me looking at trade statistics is that Tanzania marked a historic export to its neighbors in 2021, with over 32% increase in exports of manufacturers to the neighbors. And then, of course, other areas have also improved, including the resumption of tourism. Of course, tourism is still depressed because of the pandemic, but the jump, the delta, has been quite important. And then the last area I would say in an achievement is on execution. Tanzania had signed up for many large infrastructure projects like the hydroelectricity dam, the railways and roads, and many other large investments. I was quite surprised to see that execution in implementing those projects was at 96%. And this is much higher than it was in previous years, which was around 65%. So those are the major achievements. Now, of course, there's a lot of work still to be done. First of all, vaccination needs to continue to be speeded up. There is still a lot of work to do to sustain job creation, and particularly to involve and finance and support informal sector, small and medium enterprises, which make up the backbone of Tanzania's private sector, and to provide particularly more access to credit and support for those companies to grow. There is also important work to make sure that these massive investments in infrastructure are actually connected to the rest of the economy through the what you call feeder services, so that the investment can show its results. This is true for electricity, and therefore the sub-networks of electricity, roads, and also the railway, so that they can connect to the real economy and deliver results. And then, particularly because of the commitment that Tanzania has made at Glasgow and what is coming up now for COP27 in Egypt, there is an important transition for the energy sector and the climate strategy overall. And one thing that stands up tremendously, especially given the war in Ukraine, is the natural gas sector. So I'll stop here, Ben, because I could say a lot more, but I wanted to end here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Léautier. That's very interesting to hear your views on economic progress. Let me move on to our third panelist then, Elsie Eyakuze. Elsie is an independent consultant and blogger for the Mikocheni Report. She's based in Dar es Salaam. She writes also a column for the weekly regional newspaper, The East African. I have to say, on a personal level, I find Elsie's writing to be among the best of any writers that I know on any aspect of African politics. I always find her writing to be fascinating and amusing as well. And I always look forward to seeing another column of hers. Elsie, what are we seeing in terms of President Hassan's approach to politics and democracy?
Thank you very much, Ben. I know we're not supposed to be talking about the late President Magufuli, but I just want to give a little bit of context here. Under his presidency, I think he was consistent from the beginning when he said that he would focus on working on developing the country, and that the new constitution was not a process he was interested in pursuing. So from then on, I think it was not unexpected to see a slow closing of the democratic space in Tanzania. I personally straddle the NGO sector and the media sorority, and so I could feel these effects as a practitioner, as well as a citizen and as a social commentator. I do still have the Mikocheni Report blog, but I don't blog because current regulations are in the way of my doing so. I think that this affected everyone from the private sector to individuals, as well as, in my opinion, women as a collective, for better or worse. So in contrast, what we see under President Samia Suluhu Hassan in this past year is a change of tone. Certainly for the press and for social media, things have freed up a lot. I've noted that repressive laws like keeping pregnant schoolgirls out of the school education system have been rolled back. She has had what I consider to be conciliatory meetings with leaders from the main opposition party, Chadema. She met with Tundu Lissu, who is in Belgium in exile, in self-exile, and with Freeman Mbowe, who was recently released from remand after his case was dropped. On a more personal note, my new Minister for Information, Communications and ICT, Honorable Nape has spoken about a review of the laws governing the communications and media sector. I'm hoping that this will be a collaborative effort between those sectors and the ministry, because I think that we both stand to benefit from a relationship in which we are mutually trying to advance Tanzanians' interests rather than considering each other to be rivals in this area. And frankly, we have been enjoying a greater freedom of speech, freedom of information, and media freedoms and protection. And this is very important because I don't believe that democracy can exist without the fourth estate functioning well. What else I see under President Samia Suluhu Hassan is a steady and consistent effort to rectify many of the repressive tendencies of her predecessor's government. However, couple of days and weeks has shown this in the insistence on the statement of the continuity of her government with that of her predecessor, which Minister Mulamula spoke about this evening, and in her recent appointment of individuals who were members of the previous regime to prominent roles in her government. This has been met with some trepidation in some parts of the chattering classes to which I belong. I have been listening in on social media as it opens up, and for sure we're returning to a situation in which Tanzanians feel freer than they have in years to express their views. So there is an availability of a broader view and depth of knowledge about how we feel things are going. I think that things are still unfolding. It has only been 1 year of governing for Mama Samia under very unusual circumstances for Tanzania, but to have weathered it well, and I think that's a great credit to her. I think that we will begin to see the real President Samia Suluhu Hassan, as the observation of her predecessor's passing has now allowed for some space for her to reveal her leadership plan and style further. Madam President so far has always been prepared. Her speeches are very carefully prepared, and she rarely misspeaks in public. She stays on topic. She has a very calm demeanor. So I am having an interesting time learning to read her, although that's part of my job. Is she going to be the motherly figure that so many people seem to want her to be, or is she something else? I think Minister Mulamula spoke about the concept that a leader, I would like for that to be true, but speaking as someone who is on the ground and constantly listening to public conversation, this is an evolution that is still taking place in Tanzania. I think that time will tell what her presidency will be like, but I would caution people not to underestimate her political savvy, nor to invest too heavily in hoping that she will miraculously change the ruling party to align with whatever they wish to see happen in the country. We are a complex country, and I do not see changes happening overnight. Still, there is no question that governance and democracy under her will be more professional, institutional, and democracy friendly. Personally, I find her deliberative nature very comforting and an asset to the institution of the presidency. Her speeches are well documented on TBC, on the public broadcasters platforms online, which is now growing an archive that is useful to keep track of information, which is very important for a well-informed media space. Even though she will ad lib and demonstrate a sense of humor from time to time, she can also be extremely sharp, as Salim Kikeke found out when he interviewed her for BBC Swahili this week and pushed a question on her about the constitution reform. If I may be so bold as to state it, I am hoping to see less state violence under her regime. Perhaps I may even hope for a relatively functional general election come 2025, unlike the distressing situation that was the 2020 general election. But I do insist on waiting until she hits her 2-year mark. That's a personal choice. I believe that Tanzanian presidents don't quite settle into their jobs until at least 2 years in. So until then, I say these remarks with some reservation, and I will speak with more confidence about Mama Samia's presidency after the 2-year mark. In terms of societal expectations of her, I spent this morning listening to a debate about her first year in office on a local Tanzanian clubhouse room called Kumekucha, or which translates to "It Has Dawned." And the general feedback seemed quite positive up until Honorable Tundu Lissu came into the session and talked about at considerable length about his misgivings about coming back to Tanzania if she does not issue verbal assurance of his safety. Things got very interesting from that point on. But to be fair, I don't think the clubhouse or that conversation would have been possible if it weren't for her presidency and the choices that she's made in order to open up spaces. I raise this to indicate that in the coming weeks and months, there will be vigorous dialogue and initiatives to negotiate the continued multi-party democratic development of Tanzania. So those who are interested in Tanzanian affairs should be paying close attention as this year unfolds, beginning from now, frankly.
Thank you very much, Elsie. Very interesting. Let's move on then to Dr. Aikande Kwayu. Dr. Kwayu is a political scientist, as she has primarily focused her research on religion and politics, largely in Tanzania. She's also a policy consultant, combining academic research with consultancy, as well as a part-time lecturer of the law faculty at Tumaini University, Makumira, Tanzania. Aikande, being president of Tanzania has always, to date, we've always had the ruling party CCM or its predecessor. So being president of Tanzania has always been about managing both the government and the ruling party. How has President Hassan handled the party so far, and what challenges do you think she might face in the times ahead? Karibu sana, Aikande.
Asante, thank you very much, Ben, and everybody. First and foremost, I would like to start by saying congratulations to President Samia for being in office for 1 year. I think she has done a good job given the context of politics in the country and how she went into the power, as Honorable Zakia Meghji said, and also Mulamula. And I think Samia Suluhu has really tried to manage the politics of her party. And for that, I give her a lot of credit because it's not very easy. And from the very beginning, if you read very closely her first 4 speeches, including the one that she gave in the parliament, she was very clear that she wanted, or she was actually challenging the existing party approach that was leading to polarization, using of force, and very undemocratic path in the country. So I think Samia, President Samia Suluhu Hassan has really tried to change that party approach in a way that is, I would say, subtle, but at the same time, kind of confrontational, in the sense that you could see there are incidences where she's been trying to act very boldly against what you would think it's not very popular into a party, especially how the party operated in the past 6 years. So as much as it's just 1 year and we're still trying to understand her approach and her political strategy, but I think there are a few examples that would show how she's using, I would say, maybe carrot and stick in handling the party. First and foremost, if we look at the carrot, she's tried, for example, to she changed the secretariat. The moment she became the chair of the party, she changed the secretariat. So that meant that she brought her own team into the top leadership of the party, which you would see already the tone started to change of the party. Even recently, we had the publicity secretary for the party actually warning the police not to use force. And also the party secretary, most of the time he spoke about, especially in the beginning when he got into that position, he was talking about the need to argue and not using force. So you would see she's really trying to change the approach. But at the same time, she's handling it very carefully in the sense if you see how she's managing the cabinet, because members of the cabinet are also party members, very heavy party members. She has done reshuffling, maintaining more or less the same people, but also changing very strategic ministerial position. So there are changes that she's doing, but in a very gradual, yet if you read carefully, you would see they are very systematic. Also, the fact that she could boldly meet opposition leaders, for example, Tundu Lissu and also Freeman Mbowe, immediately when he came out of the remand, it shows that she's really trying to challenge the previous or the existed party approach, whereby, as I said earlier, there was a lot of polarization, and even meeting somebody like Tundu Lissu was something that was considered maybe impossible. Also, I think, although I haven't done research on how she's handling the party inside or in a systematic way, but looking at her action, overall action, changing the country, you could say the country, but again, it's a party ruling stance on COVID-19 protocols. That was something that was very boldly. She faced some challenges among party people or previous party leaders, but she boldly stood on her view. Sometimes she might come out as hardline, for example, with the issue of constitutional reform, even with yesterday's interview with BBC Swahili, or also when Freeman Mbowe, the leader of opposition party, was arrested, and the circumstances whereby he was arrested during the time when he was organizing a constitutional reform, or her stance on public rallies. There is that still the kind of old approach, but at the same time, we need to appreciate that she has to ensure that she's keeping her party not affiliation, but her party power close, but also she has 2025 election to face, and she needs to keep CCM surviving. So we need to understand that at the same time, she will be very interested. I think there is
Sorry, Aikande, we seem to have a technical issue there.
Okay.
There seems to be a bit of an echo. If it's okay with you, I think we'll move on. That was all very interesting,
please.
but I'm conscious of time. I think we need to move on to our final panel member. Just before I introduce her, I would also like to encourage any participant, if they have any questions for our panel, please use the question and answer facility that's part of Zoom. If you can ask your questions, type your questions in there. We will do our best in the time remaining to get through a few questions. I can't promise we'll get through all of them because time is of course limited, but we will do what we can. So while Professor Meghji is speaking, perhaps you could be getting your questions in. So let me introduce Professor Meghji. Professor Ruth Meena is a feminist activist and political scientist who's worked as a professor in the Department of Political Science and Public Administration in Dar es Salaam, as well as a fellow of the University of Florida and the University of Stanford. Her publications include A Conversation with Bibi Titi, a Political Veteran, which I highly recommend. It's a fascinating read to get those insights from Bibi Titi and Professor Meena. Professor Meena, the president came into office unexpectedly as a relatively unknown figure. Yes, she was vice president, but she was a relatively unknown figure, at least in mainland Tanzania. And she followed a popular, but some would say controversial predecessor. How have citizens responded to her presidency so far? Karibu sana, Professor Meena. You seem to be muted. Could you unmute?
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me in this conversation. First, let me correct you. She didn't come to politics unknown. This is somebody who has been in politics, both in mainland and Zanzibar, for 20 years. The moment she entered the parliament, she was a minister and a very prominent minister of tourism. And then later she becomes the minister of union in the president's office to handle some of the controversies which existed between Zanzibar and mainland. So she's known. So let me put that right. And then finally, not finally, she also became the vice chairperson of the Constituent Assembly, which was publicly known for both mainland and Tanzania, and mainland and Zanzibar. And we know her contribution there. Finally, a vice president. So that figure, let's admit that she was known. She was not picked from anywhere. She has had 20 years of politics and also a member of the parliament. When she was appointed as a running mate of President Magufuli, it was because they knew, the CCM knew she is popular. She was known. Otherwise, it would have been hard for Magufuli to win the seat. So from that perspective, let me put things right, that this is a politician who has stayed in politics for 20 years, who was known in both mainland and Zanzibar. The second question you asked me, how do Tanzanians feel about her? On that one, I also wouldn't like to respond directly because we have not done opinion poll. If I wanted to speak as an academician, I need facts. So I would rather say, what is my opinion about her? I'm not going to represent the Tanzanians because the Tanzanians is a diverse, there is a lot of diversities. Even if we say, yes, she's a woman, but women are also diverse. So let me share my opinion about the president and her performance over 1 year. My colleagues have almost shared most of the things I wanted to say, but for me, the immediate thing I think about her is changing the narrative. You know, some of my colleagues have said there were people who doubted whether she was going to be capable. Now she has changed the narrative. Even the opportunists in the government are now saying, Mama Samia, Mama Samia. Even those who felt that she was not capable, they are no longer able, or they don't have the courage of publicly saying this woman is not capable. In the first place, for the 1 year, as my colleagues have said, she has demonstrated that not because she's a woman, but because Samia Suluhu Hassan has capability and has had the necessary experience to be a president. Today, we would be asking ourselves, why did it take us so long to have a female president? That would be quite an interesting discussion if we were to engage with that one. So she has changed the narrative. The issues, one of the things which I see in her is opening up dialogue, national dialogue, not only with the opposition parties, but with some of us. She calls quite a number of us to discuss matters related to the nation. And we have seen her responding. For instance, we did raise issues with the Ministry of Women Health, and it had a lot of mandate. And we proposed to her, no, we can't have a ministry which is so loaded to be able to handle all those mandates. And we see her changing because she is a listener. I think some of those characteristics which are normally associated with feminine character, using her inner power to bring up changes without sacrificing or without compromising her authority. I think that is what I see in the current president, that she uses the softness in her, but being very firm. It would have been very rare for us to see a president in the previous sitting hand in hand with the opposition, particularly those who were considered to be very radical. But she had taken it in a very humble way. And somehow the other party became also, they also became listeners. Mbowe came out from that dialogue, you would think he was not in custody for over, was it 8 months? And when she discussed with Tindu, you also see Tindu vibrating. It was not the Tindu of yesterday who was always throwing tantrums against the regime. So she has been able to calm down some of the very radical voices, but because she has been listening, many people were questioning why Mbowe is in jail. Many people were saying, why do we have refugees in this country which is so peaceful? But at the end of the day, we see Her Excellency really making a difference. But also she did suggest, when she appointed the Minister of Defense, she said, you know, a minister of defense does not carry guns. He's a politician. So I'm doing this deliberately to demystify that certain positions are male dominated and should be male on, but all positions, both men and women, can manage them. And we have seen her doing it. Some of the very strategic ministries which one would not have ever thought a woman would head them, like even our foreign ministry, the defense ministry, Ministry of Trade. Those are ministries which are very strategic, and she has done it purposefully, and she does say it, that I'm doing it purposefully to demystify the current thinking that women are not capable in certain areas. And we are seeing them doing what they are now doing without doubts. And the other area where my colleagues have already raised is the whole question of girls' pregnancy coming back to school. I think with due respect, during the previous regime, there was a lot of talks, and some of the ministers were singing the same song, that we are not going to allow women, mothers, wives to go back to school. She did it, and she does it. And now the narrative is also changing. Yes, these girls have a right to access education as other girls, but yesterday they were talking differently, because there was, you know, somebody, when you are in power, when you are in the topmost powerful position, people without confidence would always be echoing what some other people are saying, but not for this regime. We have seen it changing. The other area where she also made it very clear was when the 5-year development plan, when the third 5-year development plan, when it started, some of us wanted to influence mainstreaming of gender, but there was a lot of resistance. When she came in, I tell you, very few days before it was tabled, some of us were called in, can you assist us? And the whole document had already been done without gender mainstreaming. Can you assist us? Because I think they knew the spirit now is not the spirit of yesterday. So personally, I'm saying, yes, we are seeing signals of change, and I don't think she's going to look back. We have seen the narrative changing. We are also seeing concrete things happening, particularly in the area of women's rights, and also national dialogue is happening. I think I should just end up my discussion there. Thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor. That's very, very interesting. We've had a contribution from all our panelists now, so I think given that time is running short, we have a little over 10 minutes left. I'm going to turn straight to the questions that we have from the floor. We have, yes, thank you, Hon. I see you're inviting everybody back to the floor. We have a couple of questions on foreign policy where I would like to get some input. In particular, I'm going to direct these questions since we are short of time. Dr. Léautier, I wonder if you would be able to respond to one of the questions in particular. about regional integration policy, Tanzania's membership of the EAC and SADC. Where do we see that going under President Suluhu?
Thank you, Ben, for the question. Two quick things I could point out. One is the decision made under President Samia Suluhu Hassan to integrate much faster into the SADC-led and more EAC-led focus on joining the Pan-African payment solution space, and also to attract investment in the fintech space. I think that is going to create the backbone for economic integration because it will aid financial flows. So I see that as a very strategic choice to allow the trade and finance to flow between Tanzania and its neighbors. The other one, which is also important, it has already started to show results, which has to do with goods trade and services trade, and particularly the softening of relations between the neighbors on labor, because there was a moment previously where Tanzanians working in the neighboring countries were having quite a bit of a challenge remaining there because of tensions between the countries, and that has been largely lifted now, and you see more and more Tanzanians going to work in neighboring countries. And I think those two, flow of people, flow of finance, are going to strengthen Tanzanians' role within the East African community and within SADC as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Another question, I'll direct this one to Mheshimiwa Meghji.
Excuse me, Ben, I'm not in the panel, but I just wanted to add on what Dr. Frannie has said in terms of the promotion of regional integration. What actually the president has addressed immediately as she entered office with the neighboring countries, with the members of the East African community, is to see how best to overcome the non-tariff barriers that were standing in the way of promoting trade between our countries. And after a visit, state visit to Kenya, so we found we had almost 86 barriers, and now they have been reduced to merely, I think, 8. So this was what she's been focusing on to unlock those trade barriers as we enter into the African Continental Free Trade Area. So this is one aspect I wanted to add on. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Minister. If I could turn that question then to Mheshimiwa Meghji. The President Samia is obviously she's a woman. We've discussed that aspect of her leadership to some extent already. She's Zanzibari and she's Muslim. How does that affect on a global stage, not necessarily within Tanzania, but how does that affect on a global stage Tanzania's foreign relations? You're muted, sorry.
Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that was okay. Yeah, I'm also a Zanzibari.
Yes.
You say, yeah, and a woman, and a Muslim, you say. So I think that the question of religion does not have anything to do with that. You could see that she dresses, the way she dresses, she looks very nice actually. But you can see that the question of religion has not affected her into anything as such. What she has done all along, the question of pregnant schoolgirls, very open, very clear. So I don't think that the question of religion has anything to do with any challenges for President Samia.
Can I add on that one? We have had male presidents who were Christians, Muslims, and that has never been an issue. We had Al-Hassan Mwinyi, he was from Zanzibar, he was a Muslim. We had Mkapa, he was a Christian, Nyerere was a Christian, and then Jakaya Kikwete was a Muslim. And I think the issue of religion here should not be an issue raised now because Mama Samia is a Muslim. We have interchanged those religious leaders.
But then it goes to the third question, because somebody is a woman, therefore not possible to do this, So I think that this mentality, perhaps, it's helping us to get rid of that. Samia has done it, she shows it, she moves forward, and and she's very popular, actually. She's very popular. She meets with different groups of people. And sometimes I wonder where she gets the energy to do that.
That's great, thank you. I couldn't agree more, Professor Meena. I think Tanzania has done extremely well in managing relations between different religious groups, and I think that's to be congratulated, to be much applauded. And I think going forward, I hope that will continue in the same vein. Personally, Elsie, I'd like to direct the next question to you, if that's okay. On let me just find it again. Sorry. Oh yes. On young people, youth employment, has President Samia, has she taken any significant steps in terms of increasing opportunities for young people to get employment and so on? I can see that you're looking slightly doubtful, so maybe I could pass it on to somebody else if you'd prefer.
Yes, absolutely, because I can't think of any direct statements that I'm aware of that have addressed the issue, and that is my limitation. So yeah, if there's someone who can answer the question, certainly.
No worries. Let me open that up to any panelist who wants to jump in. Youth unemployment or youth employment opportunities. Anybody want to comment on that?
Yeah, if I come in, the president's the various initiatives she has taken, and especially as a champion of the generation equality, it includes, of course, the youth, the women, and she has always, she has repeatedly said, with having almost 60% of the population that is youth.
So you've gone muted.
Yeah, I'm saying she has repeatedly said that we cannot have any breakthrough when you have the population has almost 60% is youth. So in all our initiatives, she is putting emphasis on having youth employment and opening up, when she's opening up sectors for foreign investment. It is a major preoccupation is to see how best the youth can be absorbed in these various so she's, in terms of creation of jobs, it is mostly, she speaks about the youth. And as I said, as a champion of generation equality, I think that's where she has 3, 4, 5 pillars, but one of them is youth employment, whether promotion in agriculture, whether it's industries, whether it's in all sectors. I think our emphasis when she says talks of the women, it is the youth. So, because when we talk of the women, it's not talking about Liberata, it's about the Elsies of play. So this is how she sees the youth that they cut across in all the initiatives she's taking. It is an uphill task, given it is the level of unemployment, especially for our young graduates. But she recognized that, you see, there are various programs that she has already announced in terms of providing capital. We have seen when they talk of the matching, because these are most also the youth, and she's trying to formalize that sector also. So there are a number of initiatives.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Mulamula. Could I ask you the final question as well from the floor? There's a question which it's historically whenever a foreign affairs minister of Tanzania is in the UK or a president is in the UK, we always ask the same question, and for many years we've had the same answer. I'm hoping you might be able to show us something slightly different. What are the prospects for dual citizenship in Tanzania? Are there any prospects for that to come in anytime?
Oh, thank you, because that is the question I encounter every time I meet the members of the diaspora, who I believe they are also signed in this session. We have been on 2 tracks. because of for the dual citizenship, because that entails amending our constitution. You have been following the constitutional amendment process that is told, but then we're looking at another alternative, and this is special status, which has worked for many other countries. We have been studying about how Ethiopia it has worked, how in India it has worked. You see many of the Indians abroad, they don't have even the dual citizenship, but it's special status that grants them all the rights, if it is in investment, if participation, with the exception that they cannot run for political office, but the rest is provided. So this is what we are pursuing as we are now in the process of reviewing our foreign policy, so as to bring in this component and the important role that the diaspora play, but giving them that status that would allow for them to be able to function and contribute in whether economic development or whatever with that special status. So we hope soon that we'll be able to complete this process to get the cabinet to approve this special status we are pursuing and get, of course, the approval of the parliament. So dual citizenship is a long-term goal, but in the meantime, we are working on this, which we think is the most practical way of getting the diaspora to be involved in our implementation of our foreign policy.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And I'd just like to end by thanking all of you on the panel. I found it a very interesting conversation. I hope everybody else has as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us and sharing your thoughts with us all. And with that, let me hand back to Paul Harrison for the final formalities. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you indeed there, Ben. Thank you, Ambassador Liberata Mulamula. Thank you, esteemed panel. This has been a fascinating hour or so, couple of hours, so much covered. We've heard how much the president has done in terms of this last year. We've covered issues around Mama Samia's role as a role model and breaking not just a glass but a wooden ceiling. We've heard how inspiring she is as a female leader, but beyond that, we've also heard things that are not gender related about how Tanzania is now in a calmer place. There's more dialogue, there's more stability, and not just stability, but development agenda is firmly on track, whether we're looking at the infrastructural elements or renewal of trade and investment. And of course, with freedom of speech being more open, there's more dialogue, and of course that there is more discussion going on, and that will be an ongoing thing, I'm sure. I would like to thank all of you for really a wonderful session. I think we've all learned an enormous amount, and I think it makes us all very proud to be connected to Tanzania, or for those Tanzanians, some have commented already in the chat how proud to be Tanzanian they are. So I won't go any further. Again, this is the Britain Tanzania Society. We have put this together in collaboration with our partners, Friends of Tanzania in the United States, and the Royal African Society here in the UK. And we thank you all once again. And there will be a recording for those of you who signed up to it. Please do check into that and stay connected to the society. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.